Aliens?
Aliens.
Yes. But maybe no. Welcome to the show. Aliens, yes, but maybe no with Josh and Travis. I'm Travis.
And I'm Josh.
This is an otherworldly podcast as ambiguous as our title. So welcome back, Josh.
Thank you.
I mean, I'll welcome myself into your lovely home.
Are you trying to get me to welcome you? Because
Yes.
I didn't welcome you.
I was
welcome to my
leaning
home.
on that pretty hard. Thank you for following the cues.
Yeah.
It's been 2 weeks since our last record. We had to take 2 weeks off because the last one was so heated.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. And we talked about the Hollow Moon.
Yes, we did.
You were the sweetest I've ever seen you.
Thank you for saying that, but I would disagree. That was probably the most heated I've been on this podcast to date. I still feel worked up. Still feel pretty triggered about it.
I forgot about it completely.
Very cool. As you want to do. Classic Josh.
Yep. Easy going.
Easy cheesy, lemon squeezy.
So the Hollow Moon, we talked about that. We both agreed that it is hollow. It is a spaceship.
All right. You're ramping me up, man.
Sweating.
We did not agree. I think we had very dichotomous takes on that.
That's true. At the end of it, though, we did a test.
Yeah, as we do.
One thing I do remember...
We're moving on past Hollow Moon, right?
Right.
Okay.
At the end of each episode, we do a baseline quiz for our next episode, just because we don't really know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, that's kind of what keeps the show exciting for us.
Yes.
Is not knowing what we're going to be covering on the next episode until we get the quiz.
Yes.
By our anonymous researcher, whose name rhymes with Borden.
Gordon? Torden.
Maybe.
Fjorden.
Yep. Our researcher, Fjorden.
From Norway.
Yep. From the north.
Yep. There's actually a race of Nordic aliens, just so you know.
Okay. Are you introducing a new theme for the show today?
No, I'm just saying our researcher might actually be an alien.
Okay. Well, she's doing a very good job.
She is.
Yeah.
So this last baseline quiz, it was about the congressional hearings that's been going on since 2022.
Uh-huh.
There was one question that made you laugh.
Yeah, that I thought was so funny. And turns out the funny answer was the right one.
Yeah, the Immaculate Conception.
That's what I thought the joke was that it was so close to Immaculate Conception.
Yes. What's it actually called? I forget. Constellation.
That's what it was? Immaculate Constellation?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I've been really interested in that, and our researcher has forbade me from learning anything about it because we are going to end up doing an episode on it by itself because it's such a big thing.
Okay.
That was part of the baseline quiz for this episode. It's a document that the government said did not exist, and then documents came out and it does exist. So they caught the Pentagon lying about something really big. We are not going to be talking about the congressional hearing that the Immaculate Constellation was in.
What else aren't we going to be talking about today? Let's just start listing those things.
Yeah. The rash on my back that I've been showing many people.
That was uncalled for, Josh.
No, we're not going to talk about it.
I just did a spit take.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about it.
So now my coffee is off limits.
Do you want to see it?
No.
So what we're going to talk about is mainly the 2023 congressional hearing.
Okay. So you had said there was one in 2022.
There was one.
Okay.
And that one was historic.
Same players in that one or different?
Different.
Okay.
So the 2022 House Intelligence, Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation Subcommittee hearing. Whew, it's a mouthful. That happened on May 17th, 2022. And it was the first public hearing on UFO since 1966. And that hearing, I believe, was to end Project Blue Book, which was the project and the organization that was researching since Roswell, basically.
Okay, right.
The primary focus for this hearing was to address concerns about UAPs as a potential threat to national security. So it was kind of just like, okay, we're here. These things are happening. Basically to start the ball rolling, to get the ball started, to roll the ball.
Wow, man. It's like just fixated on one word.
Yes.
Just get it out.
Balls.
Good.
But yeah, they're just trying to get the ball rolling. And it worked because we ended up having another hearing and then another.
More information coming for future podcasts. We'll probably talk about the most recent one once we've had time to collect and...
The 2024 one, we're going to do it the next episode.
Oh, damn. Spoiler for the quiz.
There is no quiz.
Oh, no. I mean, yay. It's good for me. I get to finally leave this podcast on a high note.
Yeah.
So let's back up before we get into this. Let's talk about some of the big players that are in the 2022 hearings.
It was the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, Ronald S. Moultrie, and the Pentagon's top intelligence official and Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, Scott Bray.
Those were the witnesses called to testify in the 2022 hearings.
Right. And the key takeaways included a significant increase in the reported UAP sightings, growing to approximately 400 from the previous year. The Pentagon's commitment to investigating the origins of UAPs. There's no evidence to suggest extraterrestrial origin. At least 11 near misses between UAPs and U.S. aircrafts had happened. The need for a standardized process for civilian reporting of UAP sightings. And the hearing was also followed by a closed classified session, which I would love to have been a part of.
So reading from this Wikipedia page from this hearing, it said that Scott Bray had stated that the number of frequent and continuing reported sightings had grown to about 400 since last year's mandated report, which we just talked about. He also cast out the notion that the UFOs had extraterrestrial origins, testifying that no organic, inorganic material or unexplainable wreckage indicated so. So that is in pretty stark contrast with what the 2023 hearings brought us, right?
Yeah, big.
Because Mr. Grusch had said that they did find non-human life forms within these downed craft, right?
Yeah, he used the word biologics.
He said biologics, but he also, when asked point blank why he's saying it's not extraterrestrial but not human, and he's like, well, because that's what we know. We don't know them to be extraterrestrial. We just know them to be non-human.
Right.
But he did say biologics quite a bit.
Yeah, he was, as he should be, very careful with his words. So that's kind of what this first subcommittee hearing was about. It kind of just introduced the idea. It was groundbreaking and historical just because it hadn't happened since 1966. But it was a big freaking deal. I mean, it's almost 60 years.
Yeah, since the last hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So in that hearing, lawmakers were shown declassified images and footage of UFOs, including a video of a UFO observed by a Navy fighter pilot in 2021. This is, again, the 2022 hearings.
Yeah.
A spherical object that quickly passes by the cockpit of the aircraft. Another video captured triangular objects speculated to be drones floating off the coast as seen through night vision goggles. So, I mean, this is all pretty interesting stuff.
They have actually had collisions in South America. We haven't, I mean, we may have had collisions, I don't know, but these guys are talking about near misses, but there have been collisions in the world, and that's scary. You know, it's a safety issue. And that's what a lot of these pilots are coming forward about. You know, they're like, this is scary. There's not supposed to be something there, and there is, and they're getting close to us, and we can't do anything about it. So I think that's why they brought up the near misses, is like, this is important. Like, if there's near misses, there's going to be a hit at some point.
Yeah. But you were saying there have been hits.
There have been hits, but not in the U.S. that we know of, but around the rest of the world.
Fatal?
I can't disclose that information.
Oh, boy.
No, I don't know.
You'll release it in a skiff?
Yeah.
Another interesting thing is that this hearing in 2022 versus the one in 2023 was only 90 minutes, less than 90 minutes long, the public portion of it. And what we saw was like almost 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
From start to end.
It was riveting, at least for me. Was it for you?
It was interesting. There are parts of it that I feel like I could identify which reps really were taking it seriously and which ones were just there to be folksy and try to be charming.
Yeah.
So I felt like some of them were taking it very seriously and some were just there to grandstand a little bit.
Yeah.
To me, they were very easily identified.
And I think possibly they didn't know what they were getting into.
This is not like an assignment. This is something that was volunteer. I feel like the people that wanted to be there liked the idea of being involved in something clandestine or secretive. Mm-hmm. And that's why they got into government, was to find out these juicy secrets. And any research that was done by their aides, because I'm sure that these people didn't do any of their own research. They have aides.
Yeah.
One of the reps that had called this committee or was interested in it at the end thanked his researchers, which was kind of nice. I didn't really get
that was cool. Was that Garcia?
No, that was Tim Barchett.
Excuse me?
Bullshit? Tim Burchett.
Okay. Like you said, it was short, but they did have a classified session afterwards. We have no idea how long that goes.
I'm sure there was one after 2023. There was a
Yeah.
lot of talk about having meeting outside of the formality of this public hearing.
Right.
And did you notice who was in the audience, who was in the auditorium?
How could I not?
Yeah. George Knapp
I think he was called out.
and Jeremy.
Corbell?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I could identify him just from the back of his head.
He was the only one not wearing a suit,
Yeah.
which on Instagram, a lot of people are giving him flack for. They're like, do you have no respect for the process? Like, I don't know. Stupid.
The watch he was wearing was probably worth more than two of their suits combined.
Yeah. He wore enough.
Yeah. It's fine. Like, you can show up. It's a public hearing. Like,
Yeah. I'm okay with it.
a tie is, I think, a false idea of what formality should look like. Like, a tie is a very Western culture affectation you'd wear with your clothes. Like, it does not designate how serious you're taking it.
It's just a standard that is
That we've
silly.
set up in the Western world
Yeah.
to, designate formality. But if you look anywhere else, nobody else wears a tie. Not like this.
Okay. So the 2023 House Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee hearing.
Here we go.
So there's different subcommittees.
Mhm.
The first one was that long House Intelligence, Counterterrorism, blah, blah, blah. This one is the House Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee hearing.
So what they're looking at here is like funding and the allocation of funds. That's like what falls under oversight, or things that are maybe not looked at too deeply, right? This was part of a bigger hearing, not just about UAPs.
It was about what are our steps? What are we going to do? Like the first one, we know the problem. Now, what do we need to put into place? What do we need to stop? Or what do we need to look into to make things better?
Mm-hmm.
So, July 26, 2023, the U.S. House Committee on Oversight and Accountability held a significant hearing titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, Implications on National Security, Public Safety, and Government Transparency. And they really nailed home the transparency thing. So this session aimed to explore the potential threats posed by the unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, and assesses the government's transparency regarding these incidences.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to talk about the witnesses that came forward?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. So this
You have them ranked.
I do.
You have your own personal rank of who you like best.
I did. I ranked them.
But you like them all.
I felt like these witness testimonies were the most compelling part of these hearings. Like I said earlier, I felt like some reps did not do enough of checking of boxes, and it looked like a lot of them just showed up and barely read their statements or their questions, and you could tell by the way they were asking the questions. Like one rep was like getting to a point, and then he stops and then just says Occam's razor and then continues on without explaining what he was trying to get at. He just said Occam's razor as like I'm not going to explain to you what I think it is. Maybe I don't understand what it is. My aides wrote it down. You know, aides, they're always just adding in their own voice.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that. I didn't remember that moment, but from how you explained it, it sounded as though he said it kind of like a transition, but it just didn't make any sense.
I think he wanted to go somewhere with it, but then he didn't understand. And that's the point I was trying to make is I don't think he read through his own personal dossier that was given to him by his aides. I think that he had opened it up right before walking in, read through parts of it, tried to understand it as best he could, and then without reading it, he had just mentioned a couple things that he remembered. When he realized that he'd made a mistake, he just tried to move on.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating. So I think the weakest point of this was some of the questioning, but there were some real standouts, I feel like, in this. But let's just talk about the three witnesses. So
Yeah.
Grusch, Fravor, and Graves. Saying it
Is
in
that one name?
No, Grusch, Fravor, and Graves. And saying it in that sequence, it sounds like the farm villains from the Fantastic Mr. Fox to me. But like I said, they were the most compelling piece of evidence. Usually I am of the thinking that eyewitness accounts are, we talked about memory a lot on the show. They are subject to memory, but Fravor, the commander that was cited as witnessing the Tic Tac event, what I really liked was that he had said towards his closing arguments, witnesses need to stop treating these as like a big fish story.
Mm.
And we talked about this with like the game of telephone, how a story gets bigger and bigger the more you tell it.
Yeah.
And he said, write your information down and stick to that information that you have. Don't try to make it bigger than it is.
Yeah.
And I found that absolutely in line with how I feel about eyewitness testimony.
I thought of you when he was talking about that.
Aw.
Yeah. That was Commander David Fravor.
As far as rankings go, he's my number 2.
He's a retired Navy commander and former commanding officer of the Black Aces Squadron.
Yeah.
He's renowned for his 2004 encounter with a UAP, often referred to as the Tic Tac incident. We did an episode about UAP encounters that have actual footage from the government.
And he said something about the propulsion system that we see here, right? Like we use combustible engines, things that burn through fuel, and that's what propels them forward. And also that most ways we navigate through the air requires us to have wings, right?
Yeah.
So what is that Bernoulli's principle that the air flies over and then off gives lift? These things that he identified as giant Tic Tacs, and that was another funny thing is that some of the reps, and again, this is a fault of our representatives, they kept calling it TikToks. And they kept saying TikTok. And then Burchett said, I said TikTok. I don't mean the communist Chinese app. And I was like, shut up. Like, shut up. That's you aligning yourself politically with what's going on. And then he made a joke
about his daughter calling him a boomer. And then he said happy anniversary to his wife.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, what? It was like the hell is going
a joke.
on?
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, no one is here for this now.
Yeah, we're here to get some serious information.
Yeah, some of these people have been working for decades to get this to happen.
He kept saying gold darn it. It was political grandstanding. So I found that pretty frustrating. Anyway,
I did too.
What Fravor had said that I think was pretty cool is that these UAPs that he had spotted and had nicknamed Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
He's like, basically think of a giant propane cylinder flying through the air. That's what it looks like. And that was again in reference to one of the reps calling it TikTok again. He's like, nope, think of it as like a giant propane cylinder, like a Tic Tac.
With no propulsion.
That they could identify. Yep. Yeah. There was something that's moving it forward. We just don't understand what it is.
Right. Magnets.
It very well could be magnets.
There is, when they go and test the areas after a UAP sighting, there is a lot of electromagnetic interference happening.
Sure. I believe it. Earth has a very strong electromagnetic field. So maybe they've harnessed the power of magnets.
Yeah.
Which is the third greatest power on Earth.
After air and water.
Josh.
Oh.
No, you're going listing like the Captain Planet, Earth's mightiest heroes.
Yeah. So that was Commander David Fravor.
Mm-hmm.
We also have David Grusch, one of my favorite. He was a former intelligence officer with 14 years experience in the U.S. Air Force.
He was the whistleblower that brought these hearings to this proceeding. Like he was the reason why they're discussing this is because it was his efforts.
When I think of a whistleblower, I think of someone that found out some information like, oh, this isn't right. And then they go and whistle about it. They tell everyone. This is not what he did. He filed paperwork to legally whistleblow, saying that this is an emergency.
Yep. He whistleblew within the parameters of the U.S. military, right? Like he tried to do everything above board.
And he is still, and it's crazy. And he still has his clearance.
Yeah.
Which is why he's so specific with his words and what he can and cannot say, because there's a lot of people trying to get his clearance taken away so that he can no longer testify.
He's a former intelligence officer.
Yeah. So he's a former intelligence officer with 14 years of experience.
No longer an intelligence officer.
No, but he still has his clearance. Same as Elizondo, which is bonkers. I don't understand how that works. 14 years of experience in the U.S. Air Force and National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Grusch served as a representative on 2 Pentagon task force investigating UAPs. My favorite thing about him is that he was given max clearance, the highest clearance you can, and he went and interviewed 40-something people to find out everything that they know.
Was this released on his News Nation interview that he'd been talking about all throughout?
Yes.
So he told AOC, who I felt like she had her facts in line. She's like, okay, you're telling me all of this stuff. Where can I find this stuff that you've researched? Is this accessible? Is this something that we can find? But like very pointed question, which I really appreciate. And he said, no, I can share with you outside of the meeting in a less formal setting, not in this public hearing. Also, I did a News Nation interview, and that's where you can find some of the information.
Yeah, so he knows almost everything, but there was some people in some places he tried to go and get interviews. It just didn't happen. He got stonewalled in certain situations, as well as some of these Congress people trying to go and get information. And some of these Congress people were trying to get secret skiffs done with Grusch, and they were denied. They're like, no, you can't. We don't want you to find out what he knows. So I really like him. He just seems like a real stand-up guy, really intelligent. He has all this knowledge. It seems though he's systematically trying to release as much as he can without going to prison.
Yeah. He was my least favorite of the 3. Not saying that that's bad. There's got to be a bottom. He was my 3. My number 1 was Ryan Graves.
Oh,
He was the younger member of this panel. I just liked how he was coming at this in a very, like, an endearing manner. When he was going through his statement, he was reading from something that he'd written, and I just found that charming.
And he's there representing a lot of people, like in the private sector as well as in the military.
He was a big advocate for having a more formal process for reporting this. So I don't know if it was Grusch or Graves that said later in the hearing that it was a feeling they had, nothing that was back, because there's no way to really validate this feeling, but they feel like only 5% of UAP sightings get reported. So that means 95% of the sightings that are out there are not reported. And that's because of either like intimidation or stigma. And they're trying to destigmatize seeing something that you might think is weird.
Yeah.
They want people to feel more comfortable reporting this. And that's another thing that I appreciate about these three.
Yeah. People are withholding information because they don't want to be labeled crazy because of the stigma, and they don't want to lose their job or their career or their rank that they've been working for their entire lives. Mm-hmm. Their lives could be destroyed by saying a sentence.
Right.
Which is insane. And it's not a bad sentence.
Yeah.
So Ryan Graves, he's a former U.S. Navy pilot, and he's also the executive director of Americans for Safe Aerospace. He's been really vocal about the UAP sightings and advocate for improving the reporting mechanisms for the pilots because there's nothing in place. Like these guys, they see something. If they report it, it's to their direct superior or their bosses if it's commercial flights, and nothing happens about it. Or they are deemed crazy and they lose their job. So he's a baller for sure. And he's kind of like the little man standing up and making a big change.
Yeah. But he's coming at it from a practical point of view, which is what I really appreciated. That appealed to like my sensibilities.
His testimony mainly just highlighted the frequency of UAP encounters during training missions off the U.S. East Coast.
Yeah.
And just like I said, he's emphasizing the formal reporting system for safety risks. I mean, he's not out there trying to find aliens. The most important part to him isn't the technology. It's, we know it's there. It's happening.
And also just being like safe. He wants his pilots to be able to fly in a safe environment. And so a way to do that is document any sort of anomalous behavior that you might see as you're out flying, you know, whether that's wind or, you know, inclement weather or birds, you know, whatever may be the case, buildings, that kind of thing. He's approaching this from a practical standpoint.
Yeah, it's very logical that if there's something there, everyone should know about it.
Yep. Or if that is going to be something that you're going to encounter, we should have a system in place for reporting it and documenting where it was seen and the nature of that sighting.
Yeah. Him showing up and him saying that he has like 30 people behind him that he's representing that all have their stories and their incidences. And like you said, he was endearing, but because of how endearing he was, it also made me kind of proud for him. It was just like, yeah, get it, man. Like you're doing it.
Yep.
And he was. I mean, it's very impressive what he's done. Fravor, I've seen him in documentaries.
Right.
This was by far the best anything I've seen from him. He just really talked about the Tic Tac incident and what that meant. He went through the whole thing.
At one point, he was asked about the Phoenix Lights by another one of the reps that had nothing to do with this. And he's like, "Why am I in Arizona? So what do you know about the Phoenix Lights?" And he's like, "Nothing, man. Like, I know as much as you do what's out in the public discourse.
Yeah.
Like, you tell me, like, what do you know about the Phoenix Lights? You're a rep for Arizona. What do you know about it?" And that wasn't under Fravor's purview, and that's not why he was there. He wasn't there to report on the Phoenix Lights. That's the whole part of this that was so disappointing to me, was some of the representatives asking questions that don't make any sense, and they're just like, well, I know something about this. I'm going to ask that question. Instead of doing the little bit of homework that was required of them with the people that were there in front of them, they were just like, well, I know about Phoenix Lights, and Kurt Russell was involved, right? That's pretty cool. What do you know about that? And he's just like, I liked how they were respectful but dismissive. And they were just like, that was not why I'm here. Let's move on. Let's talk about the thing that I'm here to talk about.
Yeah. I find it interesting. So Ryan Graves, he was really focused on safety.
Yep. Right.
Commander David Fravor was really focused on technology.
And science. Like that was
science.
That's a thing that I thought was really cool.
Yeah. He was like, this is far beyond anything that we have. We're getting a little bit closer, but we're not anywhere near it. But this Tic Tac video that he was a part of, that was in 2004. We didn't even have iPhones then.
Yeah.
So he's been on this big crusade, letting people know that this happened. This is real. this technology could potentially be a national security threat. If one of our enemies or another country gets this stuff, if they can just show up and dip out instantly and we can't do anything about it, that's scary. So if this technology exists, we need to know and understand it. So that was kind of cool. I really liked when he was explaining the whole day, basically, of what happened. Someone asked, well, what did your commanding officer say? And he's like, I was the commanding officer. He's like, there's nothing I could say.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. I love that. So he was the big cheese in that situation. And now he's showing up saying like, yeah, this is all real.
Yeah.
And then David Grusch, he testified about the multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reversal engineering program that he was informed of during his duties. So he claimed that the U.S. government has been aware of non-human activity since the 1930s and alleged the recovery of a non-human biologics from crash sites. So this guy knows all the info. He can't talk about much, which was very underwhelming, but he was able to say enough that was very intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
But from his research and his knowledge, there is non-biologic retrieval programs with the Pentagon. And he also mentioned that there's a disinformation program that exists. He was focusing on the whistleblowers. He's standing up for those guys, and he's doing what a lot of people can't, and he's doing it the correct way, because he mentioned multiple times that he was not treated well. He used the word corporate terrorism, where they would threaten him with removing his rank or his clearance. And he said that would happen on the professional level, but he also was threatened on his personal level.
Corporate terrorism was a term that he gave it. That's not necessarily what he was experiencing. That's just how he defined it, right? Corporate terrorism could mean a number of different things, but that's just how he felt he was being treated.
Yeah, he was basically being powered into and strong-armed
through a lot of different means, like gaslighting is one of them, where they tell you what you saw is wrong or it's not true or whatever, which a lot of whistleblowers, not just here, but across the spectrum of blowing whistles, they all experience that.
Yeah.
Whether it's, misogyny in the workplace, even in cases of rape or molestation, those are thrown around like, you didn't experience what you think you experienced, you're wrong.
Yeah.
So it's usually the oppressor or the person perpetrating these crimes or trying to hide it that uses the gaslighting.
Yeah, and it sounded though, because they asked him some follow-up questions about some of the things that happened, and he said that he wasn't able to talk about it because they have an ongoing case against the people that have done that, and he doesn't want to give them any kind of ammunition.
Right.
And they also followed up with, have you known anyone that has been hurt? And they even eventually asked, has anyone been murdered? And he said, I can't talk about that. Yeah.
And that could mean a number of different things. That could mean that he knows and can't talk about it, or it's something outside of his realm of knowledge. Like, he's not going to make a blanket statement and say, like, yeah, people were murdered, or no, people weren't murdered.
I mean, naturally, I want to just assume whenever he says I can't talk about it, it means the answer is yes. Like in anything, like, are there aliens? It's like, I can't talk about that.
Yeah.
It's like, he means yes.
Are they human that you saw or no? And they're like, I can't say that. I will say they were non-human. Well, why are you saying non-human instead of extraterrestrial? It's like, because that's the information that I have. And that's as much as I can say about it.
Yeah. Some of the key takeaways from this, I think, government transparency. Right. I mean, they mentioned multiple times the witnesses as well as the committee. Yeah, no one has trust in the government right now.
Yeah.
For good reason.
Yeah.
But hearing the underscored bipartisan concerns about the lack of transparency from the military and the intelligence agencies regarding UAPs, the lawmakers expressed frustration over the overclassification and the withholding of information from Congress and public. There was also a takeaway of national security implications. So the witnesses and lawmakers discussed the potential national security risks posed by the UAPs, especially given their proximity to the military installations and critical infrastructure. Like we've seen the jellyfish one that's just cruising through a black site.
Yeah.
And then recently there's been a lot of hive-like behavior of UAPs around military stuff. And all through history, they're very interested in military bases or nuclear sites, which is spooky.
Yeah.
There needs to be a need for a comprehensive understanding of these phenomena was emphasized to ensure airspace safety. And then there's a huge call for further investigation. The testimonies highlighted the necessity for continued investigation into UAPs and advocating for the establishment of a formal reporting mechanism and a greater government transparency to address public concerns and potential threats. So, 2 thumbs up.
It was good. Yeah, it was good.
It was nice to get this information, and it's through the right channels, and it is on public record. Like, that is really important. And it is nice about the bipartisanship. This isn't about all these things that everyone disagrees about. This is about humanity, safety.
What it should definitely be about.
Yeah.
But again, we saw with these hearings, and it was from the people that were saying that it should be bipartisan that I felt were the most partisan. And you could tell.
You definitely could tell. They were throwing in little jabs here and there about things that...
had nothing to do with the hearing.
Yeah. So the congressional hearing on UAPs is a huge shift in the government's approach to this topic. I recently saw an article that there was some lights, some weird, funky lights happening in Oregon, and 4 different pilots reported them. And they even there's a audio clip from air traffic control, and he's saying, just avoid the UFO and just maintain your own thing. So obviously the stigma is going away because it's becoming a little more prominent. These pilots were not afraid of reporting something weird and suspicious and odd. And it's exciting that it's working. I mean, I think that gets us one step closer to the big goal of...
The big goal. I kind of know where you're going with this, but go ahead.
I didn't even know where I was going.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad you interrupted me because I had nothing to say after that.
Well, what do you think the big goal is here? What is the point of these hearings? What do you think?
I think the point is to have an understanding of what's going on and to have the Pentagon held accountable for hiding things. And I think they do need to declassify things. They mentioned that a couple of times, is like there needs to be term limits on some of these images where it no longer poses a threat. And they were saying maybe 15 years. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
There should be. They should release images, but no one's in charge of the Pentagon. That's the thing. And that actually gets into the third one.
Secretary of Defense.
The third hearing, I watched a little bit of it. It is so good.
Yeah.
A lot of the representatives are not joking anymore. They're just pissed. And I think what happened is all these people went into these skiffs, learned a lot more information that we're not supposed to know, and they are livid. They now have new documentation and new witnesses coming forward with a lot more information, and they are not having it, and they are out for blood. And it is a whole different energy in the room.
Okay.
So it is very exciting. But I think that's the big goal, is to hold the Pentagon accountable because they're doing whatever they want and it doesn't matter. And no one can tell them not to, basically. And they're withholding things from the public. They're withholding things from the Congress. And we all want answers.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the big thing. We want the answers.
I want answers.
I do too. And it seems as though by how they're acting that they have them.
Who? The government? Because the government...
The military.
Okay. Well, yeah. Yep. That's the problem.
Yeah. That concludes this one. I'm excited. Basically, we're going to do a part 2 with this.
Not covering 2022, right? Because fuck you, 2022. That whole year was garbage.
Yeah. There was a couple of years that were garbage there. But 2022, we were like abuse victims getting out of an abusive relationship. And we were trying to reintegrate into society.
Yeah, we're grabbing our shoes and coat, trying to run out the door. And then they're like, oh, guess what? Aliens exist. And we're like, the fuck? I don't...
Yeah.
What? Why now?
Because they made us become all alcoholics. And then they're like, oh yeah, and aliens exist.
Yeah.
That's the big plan. Get us drunk.
Worked.
Yeah. So I'm curious on what other people think. This is a big hearing. We weren't able to cover every single topic. But yeah, if you guys want to message us, let your friends know about us so that they can learn.
Yep.
If they don't want to hear you talk about it.
Yeah.
Or if you're a broken record.
Yeah, this is a niche podcast. I understand that. But, it's also kind of fun if you're interested in like dipping your toe into the otherworldly.
Yeah. And if you're a fanatic, if you want a soft way to introduce people into this category, I would imagine this podcast is a little softer than most.
Yes, 100%. It's designed that way.
It is. Yeah. Tell your friends. And next episode, we're going to be talking about 2024 hearing, the one that happened with the Immaculate Constellation.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And then, like I said, our researcher, Jordan, my wife, has made it so I cannot research anything about that. But she said it is batshit and she gets excited in front of me about it and I can't do anything about it. and I am mad.
She disabled your Google.
Yeah. Well, I have to honor our vows.
Okay.
That was in our vows.
Huh. Well,
That I can't research aliens without
her express consent.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you for listening, guys. This is a ride.
Yeah, this has been fun. Do we do any special thanks at the end of this? Anybody we need to acknowledge? Your wife, maybe, for doing most of the heavy lifting.
Yeah,
being our researcher.
My wife did the researcher.
Creating our theme song.
Yes. So our wife, my wife, she's not our wife.
Our wife.
My wife, Jordan, is phenomenal. She is a producer of podcasts, and she helped with
giving us a leg up,
guiding us through this whole process. And we wouldn't be half of what we are without her in this adventure of ours with this podcast.
Correct.
So thank you, Jordan, for everything you do. And thank you, listeners, for listening.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.